Rhiannon, your time has expired. Senator Singh.
Thank you, Acting Deputy President. Well, anyone would think, listening to Senator Birmingham's contribution to this debate, that his head has been in the sand today and that he has had absolutely no understanding or idea of what has gone on from his Minister for Education, Christopher Pyne, who clearly backed down after not only the pressure from an open letter to the Prime Minister earlier this month, from a range of research organisations known as the National Research Alliance against this government's deregulation of universities and its effect on research, scientific research at that. But on top of that, Labor's motion that was tabled today, notice of motion tabled today, calling on the government to immediately release the research infrastructure funding that it was holding hostage. Now, that motion, of course, was a motion that Labor had the support from the crossbench. It had the support from Senators Lambie, Lazarus, Muir, Madigan, Rhiannon, Wang and Xenophon. Now, after all of that pressure, finally, Christopher Pyne came to his senses and decided that the intimidation that he had placed on the Senate, particularly the crossbench, over his very unfair and unnecessary policy for $100,000 university degrees, holding the research infrastructure funding to ransom, in doing so, limiting 1,700 scientific research jobs through that process, was a bad idea. Now, Senator Birmingham seems to be completely unawares that this has gone on today, that this back-down has occurred today. And I couldn't put it any better than I think journalist Laura Tingle put it today when she said Education Minister Christopher Pyne's attempt to blackmail the Senate by threatening scientific research funding if the higher education changes are not passed this week has backfired spectacularly. That's exactly what has happened. It has backfired spectacularly, with the crossbench joining Labor to insist, through that notice of motion, that the funding be assured for the Senate before the Senate considers the package. Now, it is pleasing to see that Christopher Pyne has come to his senses, but we know that he hasn't come completely to his senses when it comes to his back-down. What Minister Pyne should learn from today, the lesson of not just backing down on the research funding that he has now freed from his education reform package, but he should go all the way. He should go all the way and back down on his proposal of deregulation. Why? Because it is not just Labor that opposes these proposals. It's not just the crossbench that rejects this proposal. It is the Australian people, particularly students, particularly those that work in the university sector. Australians oppose these measures. They oppose cutting public funding to undergraduate courses by up to 37%. They oppose the extraordinary high university degrees that will come as a result of fee deregulation. They oppose the Americanisation of our world-class university system, and they oppose these things because they understand the value of our universities and the value of higher education and the contribution that those with degrees then contribute to our Australian society, the skills that they learn along that way. Now, the Abbott government, however, despite Minister Pyne's back-down today in relation to releasing the 1,700 jobs he was holding to ransom, intimidating the crossbench if they would not support his education package. Despite that, we know that this Abbott government did try very hard, I think up until around lunchtime, Mr Acting Deputy President, to shamelessly threaten to destroy the future of scientific research in Australia unless it got its plans for its $100,000 university degrees through this Senate. That is no way to govern, and that is certainly no way to negotiate with the crossbench. How absolutely absurd for a minister of the Crown to approach his portfolio by intimidation, by blackmail. It is absolutely ridiculous, Mr Acting Deputy President, and that is why Labor will vote against these cuts to university funding and student support. Labor will not support a system of higher fees, bigger student debt, reduced access and greater inequality, because that is exactly what Minister Pyne's package is all about. We will never tell Australia that the quality of their education depends on their capacity to pay. That is not the Australia we live in. That is not the ethos of a fair go that we know Australia to stand for. And that is why Labor will not support this package. So when Christopher Pyne threatens to cut research if he doesn't get his own way and has a tantrum as he does, Australians don't think, gee, that's a good idea. What a good idea. Let's cut scientific research, 1,700 jobs. No, they become even angrier that their representatives are standing up against the broken promises that are being subjected to threats and blackmail. Now, this is not something that the Abbott government took to the people. This is something, again, that has been thrown on the people of Australia, thrown on the crossbench with a way of intimidation and threat. And that is no way, as I said, to govern for this country. Well, Labor's position remains very clear. Since the budget, we have seen that it is not only Labor, though, that opposes the government's unfair, short-sighted higher education package. It is actually the broader Australian public. And I think the biggest summation of of this kind of charade that has gone on with Christopher Pyne over this last month really comes back to that open letter from the National Research Alliance to the Prime Minister about Australia's national public research infrastructure preparing for shutdown, as it's titled. A number of those national researchers, a number of those scientific researchers come from my home state in Tasmania. IMOS, for example, is a recipient of the NCRIS and would be deeply affected by the cuts that Christopher Pyne threatened to the crossbench. So I stand with Labor and oppose this current bill.